Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring measures. My name is Callahan. At 56 years old, I had spent 18 years as a senior captain for Altus Air, based out of Salt Lake City. 18 years of perfect safety records. 18 years of on-time departures. 18 years of training the next generation of pilots who would carry our airline forward. Lyle Pearson, our new operations manager, delivered the news while staring at his computer screen rather than looking me in the eye. His hands remained folded on the polished desk, fingers tapping against a spreadsheet that apparently determined my worth to the company. Your compensation package is no longer aligned with our growth model, he continued, finally glancing up. The severance details are outlined in this envelope. I took the manila folder without opening it. Through the window behind him, I could see one of our Boeing 737s taxiing toward the runway, the early morning sun glinting off its wings. Flight 2243 to Denver. Jacob Peters would be in the captain's seat today. I had signed off on his captain certification just 3 years ago. Is there anything else? I asked, keeping my voice even. Lyle shook his head, already turning back to his computer. Human Resources will handle the exit procedures. They're expecting you downstairs. I stood, straightened my uniform jacket out of habit, and walked to the door. 18 years dissolved in a 3-minute meeting. No questions about who would take over my training duties. No concern for the 6 flight instructors I supervised. No acknowledgement of the loyalty I had built among the crew. Captain Callahan, Lyle called as I reached for the door handle. We'll need your uniform returned before you leave the building. I nodded without turning around and stepped into the hallway where Ellen from HR was already waiting, clipboard in hand, her expression carefully neutral. As we walked toward the elevator, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Thomas Wright, one of my first officers. Is it true? News traveled fast in an airline. I tucked the phone away without responding and followed Ellen to the processing room where I would surrender my badge, keys, and the uniform I had worn with pride for nearly 2 decades. In the locker room, I changed into street clothes and folded my uniform with military precision, a habit from my Air Force days that had never left me. As I placed my captain's hat on top of the pile, I noticed a small photograph taped inside my locker, my first crew at Altus, standing proudly beside our aircraft. Most of them were captains now, commanding their own flights. They had no idea their instructor had just been grounded. I started flying when I was 19, scraping together enough money for lessons by working nights at an airport refueling station. By 25, I had my commercial license and was flying cargo routes across the Midwest. The Air Force came next. 11 years of service that took me from training flights to combat missions. When I joined Altus Air at 38, I brought that discipline and precision with me. In those early days, Altus was growing, hungry for experienced pilots to expand their routes. Harold Winters, the founder, had personally recruited me, recognizing the value of military training. Build me the best damn flight crew in the industry, he had said, and for 18 years, that's exactly what I did. I trained them all, young pilots fresh out of flight school, military transfers adapting to commercial aviation. Every captain who earned their 4th stripe in the last decade had spent time with me in the simulator, sweating through emergency scenarios and complex landing approaches. We built something special, a reputation for excellence and safety that made Altus the preferred airline for business travelers and families alike. Then Harold retired 3 years ago. His son Jeffrey took over as CEO, bringing in consultants and efficiency experts who knew spreadsheets better than they knew aviation. The first changes were subtle: reduced training hours, tighter turnaround times, fewer backup crews, small compromises that made the numbers look better but put pressure on the operational staff. Lyle Pearson arrived 6 months ago to optimize flight operations. He had never piloted anything more complex than a rental car, but he had an MBA and a mandate to cut costs. The warning signs were there. Senior staff began disappearing, replaced by contract pilots working at lower rates. Training budgets were slashed. When I raised concerns about safety margins in a management meeting last month, Lyle had smiled thinly and said, "We're aligning resource allocation with industry standards." My phone buzzed again as I left the HR office. A message from Catherine Reynolds, our chief flight instructor. Meeting in the pilot's lounge now. I should have headed straight home. Should have taken the severance and walked away clean. Instead, I found myself riding the elevator back up to the 3rd floor. 8 pilots were gathered in the lounge when I arrived. Thomas Wright, Catherine Reynolds, and 6 others, all captains I had trained, all wearing the same expression of barely contained anger. "Is it true?" Thomas asked again. I nodded once. Effective immediately. The room went very quiet. "They said it was a restructuring decision," I explained, keeping my voice neutral. "Nothing personal, just business." Catherine snorted. "Nothing personal? You've been here since before half the management team graduated college." "What are you going to do?" asked Daniel Cooper, a senior captain who had been my first officer for 5 years before earning his promotion. I shrugged. "Take some time off. Consider my options." The words sounded hollow even to my own ears. "This isn't right," Thomas said. He was pacing now, moving between the windows that overlooked the tarmac. "You're the backbone of the training program. Half the pilots in this company wouldn't have their wings without you." "The decision's been made," I replied. There was no point in fighting it. "I appreciate the support, but you all have flights to catch." Catherine crossed her arms. "My next flight isn't until tomorrow, and I'm thinking about calling in sick." The others murmured agreement, but I shook my head. "Don't put your careers on the line. That's not what I want." As I turned to leave, my phone rang. The screen showed Harold Winter's name. I stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Reed, I just heard." Harold's voice was tight with anger. "Jeffrey told me it was a mutual agreement, that you were ready to retire." "Not exactly," I said, watching through the glass as the pilots continued their heated discussion in the lounge. "This is not how I built this airline," Harold said. "Not how we treat our people, especially not someone who's given everything to Altus." "It's not your company anymore, Harold." There was a long pause. "No, it's not. But I still have connections in this industry. Victor Chen over at Skyward Global has been looking for someone to overhaul their training program." "Interested?" Skyward Global was a rapidly expanding charter airline, focusing on corporate and luxury travel. They had a solid reputation and deep pockets. "I might be," I admitted, "but I just walked out the door. I need some time." "Take the weekend," Harold said. "I'll set up a meeting for Monday morning." As I ended the call, I saw Lyle Pearson walking briskly toward the pilot's lounge, his face flushed with irritation. Through the glass, I could see more pilots had joined the original group. At least 15 now, all in uniform, all looking grim. Something shifted inside me. For 18 years, I had given everything to Altus Air. Perfect attendance, holiday flights, middle-of-the-night emergency replacements when others called in sick. I had built their training program from the ground up, created safety protocols that became industry standards, and personally mentored dozens of pilots. And they had discarded me with a 3-minute meeting and a manila envelope. I walked back into the lounge just as Lyle pushed through the door from the opposite side. "Don't you all have flights to prepare for?" he demanded. Nobody moved. 20 pairs of eyes turned to me instead, waiting. I made a decision. "Actually," I said quietly, "I believe we need to discuss crew safety concerns." Lyle's expression hardened. "Captain Callahan is no longer employed by Altus Air. Any safety concerns should be directed through proper channels." "You mean through you?" Catherine asked, her voice carrying that dangerous calm I recognized from difficult flights. "The same person who cut our simulator training hours by 30% last month?" Lyle straightened his tie. "Those adjustments were made based on efficiency analytics and industry benchmarks." "Those adjustments put planes at risk," Daniel interrupted. "And now you're firing the one person who's been compensating for your cuts by putting in extra hours with newer pilots." I held up a hand before the situation escalated further. "This isn't about me. It's about protocol and proper training. The pilots have legitimate concerns, which they can file through the appropriate channels," Lyle repeated, glancing at his watch. "Right now, They have schedules to maintain. Flight 3176 to Chicago boards in 40 minutes, Flight 2240 to Phoenix in an hour. No one moved. That's my flight to Chicago, Thomas said, and I'm not comfortable taking off without addressing these safety issues first. A muscle twitched in Lyle's jaw. You're contractually obligated to fly your assigned routes. Unless there's a legitimate safety concern, I countered. Federal aviation regulations are quite clear on that point. Lyle's eyes narrowed. Is this your play, Callahan? Disrupting operations on your way out? I'm simply supporting valid concerns raised by your pilots, I replied evenly. As a certified flight instructor, I have that professional obligation, regardless of my employment status. The standoff continued for another tense moment before Lyle pulled out his phone. I'm calling Jeffrey. While he stepped aside to make the call, the pilots moved closer to me. What's the plan here, Reed? Catherine asked quietly. No plan, I replied honestly. Just making sure your concerns are heard. But something was building in that room, a collective resistance I hadn't anticipated. More pilots were arriving, alerted by text messages circulating through the crew. The lounge was getting crowded. Lyle returned looking smug. Jeffrey is on his way down. In the meantime, all pilots are ordered to prepare for their scheduled departures immediately. Or what? Asked James Bennett, a veteran captain who had transferred from United around the same time I joined Altus. Or you'll face disciplinary action, Lyle snapped. Possibly termination. James laughed, the sound sharp in the tense room. I've got 27 years of clean flight records and 14 years at this airline. You want to explain to the board why you're firing senior captains during peak summer travel season? The elevator doors opened, and Jeffrey Winters strode in, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the pilots' uniforms. At 35, he looked like a younger, less weathered version of his father, but lacked Harold's warm demeanor and aviation knowledge. What's going on here? He demanded, scanning the room. Your pilots have safety concerns, I said before Lyle could speak. Concerns that have been systematically ignored for months. Jeffrey's expression tightened. Reed, you're no longer employed here. This doesn't concern you. It concerns anyone who cares about aviation safety, I replied, and anyone who might fly on one of your planes. He turned to address the pilots directly. I understand there may be some attachment to Captain Callahan, but this is a business decision, nothing more. His gaze swept the room. Now I need everyone to return to their duties immediately. No one moved. This is insubordination, Jeffrey warned. Catherine stepped forward. No, sir. This is a formal safety stand-down initiated by concerned flight crew members, as permitted under federal aviation regulations and our union agreement. Jeffrey's face flushed. Fine. You have 1 hour to present your concerns, in writing, to Lyle. Then everyone returns to their scheduled flights. As he turned to leave, he paused beside me. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. I could have made this transition easy for you. This isn't about me, I repeated. But we both knew that wasn't entirely true. The pilots gathered in the briefing room, quickly drafting a comprehensive list of safety concerns. It wasn't difficult. They had been accumulating for months. Reduced training hours, shortened turnaround times that left inadequate room for proper pre-flight inspections, maintenance issues that were documented but deferred, pressure to reduce fuel loads to save costs. I sat quietly in the back, offering occasional input but mostly watching the organic organization of a crew I had trained. They were professional, methodical, and thorough, everything I had taught them to be. While they worked, I stepped out to make a phone call. Victor Chen. The voice was crisp, authoritative. Mr. Chen, this is Reed Callahan. Harold Winters suggested I call. Captain Callahan, Victor replied, his tone warming. Harold spoke highly of you, very highly. I understand Altus has made a significant error in judgment. That's one way to put it. I have a proposition for you, Victor continued. But first, tell me what's happening there now. Harold mentioned something about pilot unrest? I explained the situation briefly. Fascinating. Victor said when I finished. And predictable. Listen, I need to make some calls. Can you meet tomorrow instead of Monday? I can meet whenever you want. Good. In the meantime, don't sign anything from Altus. No severance agreements, no non-competes, nothing. Can you do that? Yes. Excellent. I'll be in touch with details. When I returned to the briefing room, the atmosphere had changed. The pilots were huddled around Catherine's laptop, expressions grim. What is it? I asked. Daniel waved me over. We were pulling documentation to support our safety claims. Catherine found something in the system. Catherine turned the screen so I could see. It showed a series of maintenance reports for aircraft in the Altus fleet, reports with discrepancies between the initial submissions and the final versions. These were altered, she explained. Maintenance issues downgraded from critical to advisory. Required service intervals extended beyond manufacturer specifications. I scrolled through the documents, my concern growing with each page. How long has this been happening? Based on what I can access, about 4 months, Catherine replied, right after the new maintenance management software was implemented. The software Lyle insisted would streamline operations, Thomas added. This went beyond cost-cutting. This was dangerous, potentially criminal. We need to include this in the report, I said. Catherine nodded. Already done, but read. This isn't just about safety anymore, this is fraud. These records are submitted to the FAA. The door opened, and Jeffrey entered with Lyle and 2 men I didn't recognize. Your hour is up, Jeffrey announced. Lyle will review your concerns and address them appropriately. In the meantime, these gentlemen are from company security. They'll escort Captain Callahan from the premises. Catherine closed her laptop and stood. We're not finished. Yes, you are, Jeffrey replied coldly. All pilots are to report to their scheduled flights immediately, or face termination for job abandonment. Did you know about the maintenance reports? I asked him directly. Jeffrey's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. The falsified maintenance records, the ones being submitted to the FAA with critical issues downgraded. Lyle stepped forward quickly. That's a serious accusation without evidence, and completely off topic from the agreed discussion. We have the evidence, Catherine said, both versions of the reports. Jeffrey and Lyle exchanged a glance that confirmed everything. This meeting is over, Jeffrey declared. Security will remain here until all pilots have left for their assigned duties. As the security guards moved toward me, I saw Thomas quietly slip Catherine's laptop into his flight bag. Whatever happened next, the evidence was secure, and I suddenly understood that this wasn't just about my termination. It was about silencing anyone who might uncover what they had been doing. The security guards escorted me to my car in the employee parking lot. As we walked, my phone buzzed with a text from Victor Chen. Meeting confirmed, 9 a.m. tomorrow, Skyward Global headquarters. Once alone in my car, I called Harold Winters. It's worse than we thought, I told him. They've been falsifying maintenance records. Harold's sharp intake of breath told me everything. That explains the sudden profit margin improvements Jeffrey's been bragging about. Cutting corners on maintenance. The pilots have evidence, but Jeffrey's threatening termination if they don't fly. Where are you now? Parking lot, they just escorted me out. Good, stay away from the terminal. I'll make some calls. I drove home to my empty house, divorced 3 years ago, daughter in college on the East Coast, and waited. Within an hour, my phone began lighting up with messages. Thomas. Flight 3176 to Chicago canceled. Mechanical issues. Catherine. 2240 to Phoenix grounded. Crew unavailable. James. Denver route canceled. Similar story across the board. One by one, Altus pilots were finding reasons not to fly. Not an organized strike. That would be illegal without proper union procedures. But individual decisions based on professional judgment and safety concerns. By evening, the Altus website showed dozens of cancellations. I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Captain Callahan? This is Lisa Brennan, FAA Safety Inspector. I understand you may have information about falsified maintenance records at Altus Air. I do, but I'm not the primary source. You should speak with Catherine Reynolds, their chief flight instructor. We're working on that, Inspector Brennan replied. In the meantime, would you be willing to provide a statement? Absolutely. The next morning, I arrived at Skyward Global's headquarters 15 minutes early. The modern building gleamed in the morning sun, the company's distinctive blue and silver logo prominently displayed. Victor Chen met me in the lobby himself, unusual for the CEO of a growing airline. He was about my age, with a firm handshake and direct gaze. Thank you for coming, Captain, he said, leading me toward the elevator. We have a lot to discuss. In the conference room upstairs, he got straight to the point. Altus Air is in serious trouble, Victor began. The FAA launched an investigation last night. Their stock is already dropping on the news. I'm not surprised. What might surprise you is that we've been watching Altus for some time. Their cost-cutting measures created an opportunity for us. We've been planning to expand our pilot roster to compete more directly with them on premium routes. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an employment contract with a compensation package significantly higher than what I'd had at Altus. We want you to lead our flight operations and training program, Victor continued. Complete autonomy. Build it your way, with safety as the priority. I glanced through the contract, noting the title, Director of Flight Operations. There's more, Victor added. We're prepared to offer positions to any qualified Altus pilots who want to make the switch. Immediately. How many positions? How many pilots do you trust? I thought about the faces in that room yesterday. The professionals I had trained and mentored for years. At least 30, I replied. Experienced, safety-focused captains and first officers. Victor smiled. Perfect. That's exactly what we need to execute our expansion. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. FAA investigators at headquarters. All flights grounded pending inspection. I showed Victor the message. Timing is everything in business, he said. Sometimes you have to wait for the right moment to make your move. Like when your competitor fires their most connected pilot and alienates their entire flight crew in one catastrophic day of miscalculations. I accept, I said, extending my hand. The plan was taking shape, not one of revenge, but of rebuilding something better. 3 weeks after my termination, I stood in Skyward Global's newly expanded training center. The state-of-the-art facility featured 6 flight simulators, advanced emergency training equipment, and classrooms equipped with the latest aviation technology. Victor had delivered on his promise of autonomy, approving my design specifications without hesitation. What do you think? Victor asked, surveying the space. It's exactly what I envisioned, I replied. He checked his watch. They should be arriving soon. On cue, the main doors opened. Catherine Reynolds entered first, followed by Thomas, Daniel, and 27 other Altus pilots, all wearing civilian clothes, all carrying their personal flight bags. Welcome to Skyward, I said simply. Catherine grinned. Nice setup you've got here, Captain. As the pilots explored the facility, Victor pulled me aside. 30 pilots in one day, that's quite a statement. They're the best in the business, I told him. My phone rang. Harold Winters calling. You watching the news? He asked without preamble. No, why? Turn it on. Any business channel. I nodded to Victor, who activated the large screen in the briefing room. The business news showed Altus Air's stock in free fall, down 46% since the FAA investigation began. The ticker at the bottom indicated trading had been temporarily halted. Jeffrey just resigned, Harold said in my ear. Board forced him out after the preliminary FAA findings. Lyle's gone too, effective immediately. The news anchor was saying, industry sources confirm that Altus Air has canceled over 340 flights in the past 3 weeks due to pilot shortages and aircraft groundings. The company has been forced to lease aircraft and crews from competitors at premium rates to maintain their core routes. Victor turned to the assembled pilots. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the future of premium aviation. I thought of Lyle Pearson's dismissive words. Your compensation is no longer aligned with our growth model. He had been right in a way. I was worth far more than Altus had been paying me, a fact now quantified precisely by the market value of 30 experienced pilots and 340 canceled flights. Sometimes the most powerful response is not what you say, but what you build after you leave. 6 months later, I stood on the tarmac watching Skyward's newest aircraft, a sleek Boeing 787 Dreamliner, make its final approach. The plane touched down smoothly, reverse thrusters engaging at exactly the right moment. Perfect landing as I'd expect from Catherine Reynolds. Skyward Global had expanded rapidly, adding 16 new routes and capturing a significant portion of the premium market formerly dominated by Altus. Their training program, my training program, was already being recognized as the industry standard for safety and excellence. Harold Winters joined me on the observation deck, watching as the aircraft taxied toward the terminal. Altus board offered me the CEO position yesterday, he said casually. Asked me to come back and fix the mess. Are you going to take it? Harold shook his head. That chapter's closed. Besides, I'm enjoying retirement. The Dreamliner came to a stop at the gate. In a few minutes, Catherine and her crew would disembark, having completed another successful international flight. They're sending an envoy to talk to you, Harold continued. New board chairman. They want you back, Reed. Desperately. I wasn't surprised. Altus had managed to stay afloat, but their reputation had suffered. Rebuilding would require experienced leadership they no longer had. What will you tell them? Harold asked. Below us, Catherine emerged from the terminal, spotted me on the deck and waved. I'll tell them I'm exactly where I belong. We watched as the ground crew prepared the Dreamliner for its next journey. Tomorrow I would be in the captain's seat again, piloting a charter flight to Tokyo. Not because Skyward needed me in the cockpit, but because I had negotiated the right to fly regularly as part of my executive duties. Some things you don't give up, no matter your title. You built something remarkable here, Harold said. We built it, I corrected him, thinking of all the pilots who had taken a chance on following me. The afternoon sun glinted off the aircraft's wings, much like that morning when I had watched Flight 2243 taxiing from Lyle Pearson's office. The difference was now I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not grounded, just flying a better route.